Disposables have been around for a long time, designed as a cheap and affordable option for the everyday, non-professional consumer. And as film has become more popular, people are seeking something more analog and nostalgic, but also easy. So people have turned to disposable cameras. Today, we'll be comparing two of the most popular brands, Kodak and Fujifilm. We'll do a side-by-side comparison to see which images are better and which situations each camera may be better suited for. Now, before we compare the pictures side by side, let's physically compare these cameras and see what's different. Well, I'll just be honest, physically speaking, the Fujifilm camera wins in literally every category. The Fujifilm disposable is smaller, lighter, the viewfinder is enormous, it is so much easier to see, and it's also got this optional loop here that allows you to add your own camera strap if you want. Ergonomically speaking, it's just better in every way. The Fujifilm disposable has an ISO of 400, which is a very basic all-around ISO sensitivity. It's got an f10 aperture, a shutter speed of 1/140th, a focusing range from 1 meter to infinity, and the flash effective range is between 1 meter and 4 meters. The Kodak has an ISO of 800, an aperture of f11, and a shutter speed of 1/100. Focusing distance from 1 meter to infinity, and a flash effective range from roughly 1 meter to 3.5. And one thing that's really important to mention here, you'll notice on the Fujifilm, it has this protruding plastic right around the lens. That means when you're holding the camera, it gives a place for your finger to rest against. However, in the design of the Kodak camera, this is completely flat. So it's actually really easy to accidentally cover up the lens with your finger. While conducting all of these tests, in all instances that I accidentally got my fingers in the shot, they were all with the Kodak cameras. So that's just something to keep in mind. To use the flash on the Fujifilm, you simply push up on this switch. You can audibly hear it charging up, and this little plastic prism comes up to indicate that the flash is ready. This switch is very easy to use, and it's very, very obvious when it's working and ready to go. The Kodak flash is not fun. In order to use it, you hold down this button right here to charge up the flash. At the top of the camera is this little LED indicator to tell you that it's ready to go. However, I've had so many pictures ruined because it told me the flash was ready, and for some reason, it didn't fire. I've been shooting film for years, and I definitely consider myself somewhat of an expert in this realm, so the fact that I could still mess it up kind of makes me question the ease of use with its flash. And one important thing to mention with the Kodak's weird flash is selfies. So one drawback to both of these cameras, anything closer than 1 meter is going to be out of focus. And what usually happens within 1 meter are selfies. The Kodak actually suffers even more from this because if you're trying to use the flash, you have to use 2 hands to take a selfie, 1 hand to hold down the flash button, and 1 to actually take the picture. And because of this, you'll end up holding the camera a lot closer than if you had just 1 arm out. There's a higher chance that you're not going to be in focus because you're holding the camera too close. That's definitely one thing to think about. Now let's quickly compare how the flash performs on both of these cameras. The recommended distance for the flash is anywhere between 1 and 3 meters and 1 and 4 meters. This is definitely good to keep in mind, especially if you're trying to take selfies or if you're taking group pictures, being conscious of how far away the camera is from your subject. Okay, so we've already established that physically speaking and design-wise, the Fujifilm is just superior in pretty much every way. Now let's finally dive into comparing these images side by side, and we are going to do a blind comparison, and you can go ahead and guess which is which. And the point of this test is to nitpick and pixel peep over these tiny little differences that people probably wouldn't even be able to notice to see these film photos in their untampered, pure form. But I need to remind you that there is no such thing as an unedited film scan because film scans have to be converted from a negative into a positive, and running it through a software alone introduces some bias. So as I'm the one who developed, scanned, and edited all of these pictures, I manually edited every single one of these one by one to match the temperature and tint to both each other and real life as closely as I possibly could, but everything else is completely left alone. So yes, technically I did tamper with these. However, all of the editing was to bring them to a closer neutral middle ground so that we can get a more accurate comparison between these two films. So with that out of the way, let's see if you can tell the difference. Now stop what you're doing, go ahead and comment down below what your guesses are before we reveal the results. Photo A was the Kodak disposable and B was the Fujifilm disposable. So let's really deep dive into these pictures and I'll give you my thoughts and opinions on the differences that I'm seeing. Generally speaking, I find that the Kodak is generally more flat and has less contrast. And the Fujifilm is quite the opposite. It has a lot more contrast. And if you know anything about editing, when you increase the contrast, it actually has a side effect of increasing the saturation. And you can definitely see that here with the Fujifilm having more punchy colors. However, if the opposite is desired, the more flat, less contrasty look of the Kodak feels a little bit more natural and true to life. Another observation that I noticed is the Fujifilm really struggles in the shadows. The shadows in the Fujifilm images tend to fall more cooler and magenta. The Kodak has these more natural fall off into the shadows and really minimal tinting. And the last observation I'll make here, since the Kodak is an 800 speed and the Fujifilm is a 400 speed, when we raise the exposure of the Fujifilm to match more closely with the Kodak, we start to notice more grain being introduced, and you can see that here in the dark parts of the image. The Kodak has an ISO speed of 800, and this extra one stop of light does make it better suited for those darker environments. So just speaking in terms of ISO alone, the Fujifilm may be better suited for more outdoor bright settings, and the Kodak may be better suited for those more shaded shooting situations. Now, with all of this said, I actually really like the images from both of these cameras. When they're correctly white balanced and tinted, these both look pretty good to me. As far as the image goes, it really boils down to preference. Whether you lean toward wanting more warm and somewhat more natural looking film photos, or if you want them to be a little bit more contrasty, and the Fujifilm is a little bit more susceptible to these colored undertones in the shadows. So yeah, it kind of really depends on which look you're going for. I would also argue that the Fujifilm tends to look or appear that it's sharper, again, simply because there's more contrast. So between these two cameras, which would I suggest for you? If you're wanting film photos that were a little bit more natural and warm, then the Kodak would be the way to go. But in every other category, this camera was so frustrating to use. Realistically, I just imagine this being so much more easier to carry around and use. It's smaller and lighter, the flash is easier to use, the viewfinder is enormous, so it's really easy to compose. This camera bump prevents you from getting your finger in the shot, and if you really care for it, there's a loop for a camera strap. Physically speaking, I think the Fujifilm camera wins with perfect scores all the way down the board. I do like the more warm and natural look of the Kodak. I don't see significant enough of a difference in the image quality to outweigh all of those annoyances with the Kodak. If you're liking this video, I made a video featuring all of the top mistakes that I see people making with disposable cameras, and you'll really enjoy giving that a watch. These videos take months to make, so I would really appreciate if you liked this video and considered subscribing to my channel for more videos like this. Leave any comments if there's other tests that you'd like me to make. Do not forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.